Okay, I'm going to go ahead and admit to the room.
Hi, everyone. Just a couple Zoom reminders before we get started. Everyone will be added on mute. Please disable your video throughout the speaker's presentation to minimize any distractions. During the session, you can submit any questions you might have for the open Q&A in the chat box. And we will address questions in the Q&A after the speaker's presentation. And FYI, this VET is being recorded. It looks like we're hitting almost critical mass here. Lindsay, do you want to click on to the next page? Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's VET NYJL Voices of Advocacy and Activism, hosted by the VET Committee and Archives and Photography Committee. We're so excited to have you all here with us this evening. Lindsay will be hosting most of this VET. She is our great partner here at Archives and Photography co-chair. She has combined her love of event planning, design, and historical research and photography to create and lead over 200 events and public history exhibits in NYC. Notable events include Revolutionary America, Portraits of the Past, Present, and Possibility, Silent Witness to History, 175 Years of Federal Hall National Memorial, Keepers of Our Parks, Manhattan Sites, the first and second annual George Washington Inaugural Ball. She is a very committed volunteer, and when she is not giving tours at NYC museums, she champions and plans events, snapping photos, and is part of many programs within the city. Ms. Mulholland has been with the NYJL has been an NYJL volunteer since 2007, but first held her official volunteer role at the age of 13. Since moving to NYC, she has lended her talents in event planning, social media, photography, and fundraising to several roles in NYC nonprofits for what is nearing 20 years. Thank you, Lindsay.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that introduction. We're so excited to be a part of this evening. I'm going to stop sharing here. Welcome, everyone. As we were saying before, this is the Archives and Photography, Voices of Advocacy and Activism. Last year, we had a great deal of interest and in our archives. With Flora, which is my other half who's not here right now. Flora is the keeper of our archives here, but alongside co-chair Bonnie Gillis and I, we're the co-chairs for the committee. While we did focus a lot on training last year with our committee members, a few of you I see on here today, we're going to start kind of going into the archives. So we have some really great video that we're going to start out with an overview of basically the advocacy of the New York Junior League for what's almost 125 years at this point. So yeah, one of the things we also did too was ask our committee for contributions. So that portion is going to be a little bit more live later too. But we really appreciate everyone's interest in this. And actually, Shannon, who's on this and behind the scenes right now for this committee, gave a great idea for what we can do to make it more fun and inviting potentially for another event, or maybe you might see this in another video too. So as we get started today, I'm going to share a video. We're going to do some Q&A. Then we're going to meet an amazing photographer, Kristen Blush, who will be our second portion of the evening. So I'm going to get started with our video, and then we're going to see some more contributions from the committee. And we're really excited to have everyone here. I didn't think I'd be so nervous as I am today. My apologies for that. Let's double check. All right, here we go. So I'm going to start the video, and I just want to make sure if you can't see or hear, just let me know. So here we go. So this is our video on voices, NYJL Voices of Advocacy and Activism. Welcome to the New York Junior League Voices in Advocacy and Activism, where we'll embark on a captivating exploration of the profound impact the New York Junior League has had in New York City and beyond since its inception in 1901. It is truly an honor to share this illustrious history with you, made possible by the dedicated efforts of our Archives and Photography Committee, whose passion and research enrich our gathering this evening. Tonight, we invite you to delve into the treasures in our New York Junior League archives and witness the remarkable journey of nearly 125 years of inspiring women. From the visionary Mary Harriman and her original 9 pioneers to the 80 dedicated members who joined that first year, this legacy continues to you, our esteemed audience, who carry this proud tradition forward today. Welcome. Since its founding in 1901, the New York Junior League has played a pivotal role in public policy advocacy, women's rights, community support, and so much more. Throughout its history, it has evolved to meet the needs of society while empowering volunteers and addressing critical social issues. Through innovative programs and strong community partnerships, the League demonstrates its ongoing commitment to improving the lives of some of the city's most vulnerable populations. Its dedication to community health, advocacy, and service has made a lasting impact in New York City and beyond, influencing the lives of countless individuals. It was in 1901 that Mary Harriman, a 19-year-old Barnard College student, and 9 friends established the New York Junior League. Originally named the Junior League for the promotion of settlement movements, its goal was to contribute to community improvement. In its first year, 80 young women joined, focusing on enhancing social conditions. It was in this first year that 4 volunteer committees were set up to begin programs to support the community, including settlement houses on the Lower East Side. In 1903, a young 19-year-old Eleanor Roosevelt joins the New York Junior League. She first serves as a dance teacher for girls in a settlement house. She later invites her future husband, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, to witness the challenges faced by the residents of the settlement houses. Later, both credit the New York Junior League for inspiring their social activism on a more national level when Franklin Delano Roosevelt becomes president. It's no surprise that by 1907, there was a name change and expansion. The organization changes its name to Junior League for the Promotion of Neighborhood Work and included Parks and Playground Committee, creating playgrounds on vacant lots, and the Tenement House Committee, promoting better housing for the underprivileged. By 1911, there was an expansion of community partnerships, including volunteers to teach arts, calisthenics, dancing, and singing at the Rivington Street Settlement House. Activities expand to other settlement houses like Greenwich House and Hartley House. New committees formed to assist included the Charity Organization Society, hospitals and district nursing, visiting teachers, music, entertainment, and lectures. 1911 marked the opening of the Junior League Hotel. The Junior League Hotel for Working Women opens, offering 274 rooms, aimed at young career women of all backgrounds. Facilities included a laundry room, sewing machines, typewriters, and a library. This hotel was operated by the New York Junior League until 1931, when it became an apartment complex. During the First World War, 21 New York Junior League members serve in France with the YWCA Overseas Unit. Volunteers also assist the Red Cross canvassing for pledges and selling Liberty bonds. They also raised $22,000 to maintain YMCA huts for soldiers abroad. In 1917, New York Junior League volunteers canvassed for Army recruits as part of the Mayor's Committee on National Defense. Members also gather signatures for the Women's Suffrage Party advocating for women's voting rights. New York State voters approved the amendment granting women the right to vote in November 1917. On August 18, 1920, the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution is ratified, granting some American women the right to vote. In 1921, the New York Junior League creates a legislative committee to study laws affecting women and children. This committee informs volunteers about crucial issues, leading to a long history of New York Junior League advocacy. The work continues today through the Advocates for Public Policy Committee. In 1929, New York Junior League volunteer Ruth Sears Baker Pratt becomes the first woman from New York State elected to Congress. 1930 was the formation of the Employment Bureau Committee. The New York Junior League creates the Employment Bureau Committee to help individuals find paying jobs. In 1933, the New York Junior League Housekeeping Service is formed. It replaces the baby shelter, providing care for children while their mothers are at work or are hospitalized. In total, 259 children are cared for through this program. This service is transferred to the Children's Aid Society in 1937. In 1934, Mary Harriman is welcomed to the White House. First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, a former New York Junior League volunteer, invites Mary Harriman Rumsey and Congresswoman Isabella Greenway to the White House. They work on addressing issues arising from the Great Depression. In 1956, a collaboration with the Museum of the City of New York. The Museum Committee of the New York Junior League collaborates with the Museum of the City of New York. Volunteers recreate the interiors of 17th century Dutch colonial homes in New Amsterdam. This effort is part of the museum's Ease Touch exhibit, designed specifically for school children. The exhibit encourages children to touch and examine the displayed objects, fostering interactive learning. In 1957, an English teaching program for adults was established with the New York Junior League. The program runs for 35 years, helping countless New Yorkers learn English. In 1966 marks the introduction of New York Junior League evening committees. The New York Junior League begins hosting evening volunteer programs to accommodate women entering the workforce. This initiative reflects the changing lifestyles of women and enhances volunteer participation. In 1975, the New York Junior League expands its support for the prison population. In response to national concerns, the New York Junior League launches 2 programs: Work Opportunities for Women, WOW, as well as skills training programs, STEP, for inmates at the Women's House of Detention on Rikers Island. In the first year, 7 women secured jobs post-release. New York Junior League continued its support of female prisoners at Bayview Correctional Facility until 2012 and still collaborates with the Women's Prison Association today. In 1978, the New York Junior League shows its support for domestic violence victims. The New York Junior League partners with the Legal Aid Society community law offices in East Harlem to assist survivors of domestic violence in obtaining uncontested divorces. The program, called HASTE, standing for Helping Abused Spouses to Escape, operates from 1978 to 1994 and resumes again from 1996 to 2002. Also in 1978 was the launch of the Rape Awareness Campaign. The New York Junior League initiates a comprehensive multimedia rape awareness campaign featuring TV and radio public servants announcements, bilingual posters on buses and subways, educational materials for school children. The campaign significantly increases reported cases and improves mental services for victims. For this work, the New York Junior League receives the Andy Award of Excellence from the Advertising Club of New York. In 1978, the New York Times service announcements about venereal. Volunteers run hunts to address questions of the venereal disease until 1980. The New York Junior League created a collaboration with New York City Public Committee and campaign. They launch a citywide Arm Yourself with Awareness initiative with Mayor Ed Koch and Police Commissioner Benjamin Ward. In 1987 was the formation of the statewide Public Affairs Committee. The New York State Public Affairs Committee, or NYSPAC, is established. It represents 17 junior leagues in New York advocating on critical state and national issues. In 1988 is the launch of the Milbank Pelham Fritz Project. In honor of its 90th anniversary, the New York Junior League launches Pelham Fritz Apartment Project, originally named Project Phoenix. They collaborate with the Children's Aid Society to renovate 3 buildings for families in need. In 1990 is the opening of the Pelham Fritz Apartments. The Pelham Fritz Apartments opens as transitional housing for homeless families. A tenants association is formed to support those residents. In 1991, the Playground Improvement Project was launched. The For Kids by Kids project, later named the Playground Improvement Project, or PIP, kicks off under New York Junior League President Pat Swinney Kaufman. The project focuses on renovating playgrounds throughout New York City and continues its work until today. 1992 marks the year that Congresswoman Carol Maloney was first elected to Congress. New York Junior League volunteer Carolyn Maloney becomes the first woman elected to represent New York's 14th Congressional District. Among her notable achievements include being the first woman to represent New York City's 7th Council District and being the chair of the Joint Economic Conference. In 1995, an AIDS awareness campaign was created. The Teens and AIDS Committee, in collaboration with COPE, creates an AIDS public awareness campaign. The project includes a subway poster contest with artwork by children alongside support programs for families affected by HIV and AIDS. In 1996, the Advocates Against Domestic Violence hosts a vigil featuring Silent Witness exhibit to honor victims. The exhibit travels nationally, raising awareness about domestic violence. In 1999, the New York Junior League's Advocates for Public Policy Committee, in collaboration with the Brooklyn Junior League and Manhattan Borough President Scott Stringer, helps pass the Clinic Access and Anti-Stalking Acts. This legislation marks a significant victory for domestic violence advocates. In 2000 marked the opening of the CHAMP Health Center. The Community Health Access Model Program, or CHAMP, opens after breaking ground in 1996. This center offers vital health education services on asthma, nutrition, HIV and AIDS, smoking, diabetes, infant care, and serves over 12,000 individuals annually. On September 11th, 2001, New York Junior League volunteers respond to tragedy. New York Junior League volunteers serve meals to rescue workers at Nino's restaurant and established a disaster relief fund in collaboration with the Brooklyn Junior League. In total, they raised $293,000 through a benefit to support relief efforts. In 2005 is the introduction of the First League Fund. New York Junior League announces grants for community organizations through the First League Fund. Grants of up to $2,500 were awarded for short-term financial needs. Recipients have included Women in Need, Carter Burden Center for the Aging, the Children's Aid Society, Harlem Education Activities Fund, and Visiting Neighbors. In 2005, the Advocates for Public Policy Committee supports Intro 552 to remove toxic cleaning products from New York City buildings, including public schools. This legislation is signed into law December 2005 to improve indoor air quality. On May 13th, 2005, the New York Junior League partners with the New York Roadrunners to host the Mother's Day Race to erase domestic violence. Nearly 5,000 participants raised awareness of domestic abuse through this annual event for nearly 3 years. In 2006 was the enactment of Timothy's Law. Following 2 years of New York Junior League advocacy, Governor Pataki signs Timothy's Law, establishing mental health parity and health insurance coverage. In 2007, the New York Junior League's Advocates for Public Policy Committee advocates for strong legislation recognizing human trafficking as a crime. Governor Spitzer signs the comprehensive human trafficking bill into law in May 2007. In 2015, Governor Andrew Cuomo signs the Trafficking Victims Protection and Justice Act, or TVBJA, as part of the Women's Equality Act. The New York Junior League advocates for protections for trafficking victims, particularly sexually exploited children, during legislative sessions from 2011 to 2015. In 2022, the Advocates for Public Policy Committee supports the reintroduction, named for New York Junior League volunteer Michelle Alyssa Go, the Michelle Alyssa Go Act, announced by Congressman Dan Goldman. New York Junior League members attend the press conference in Times Square, highlighting ongoing advocacy efforts for community safety and justice. For 125 years, the New York Junior League has continued to adapt its programs to meet the evolving needs of New Yorkers and beyond. Thank you for joining us for this look back into the advocacy and activism of New York Junior League volunteers. We look forward to seeing your stories in the archive soon. Thank you. All right, everyone. So that was like a definite thing of like a lot of information to you about, 125 years of history. You can imagine that within this time frame, even just this year, for example, we've got over 40 committees full of all this work being done every day, almost every day of the week, right? So there's so much to find in our archive. I wanted to check in and see in the chat if there are any other, let us know. Let us know a little bit more about what you're interested in. If there's anything that struck your interest that you hadn't known about before or anything like that too. I'm also going, while you're doing that, I'm going to share our committee. Also shared some of their contributions as well. So topics within the archive that they went through to find out what they were interested in. And their names were shared a little bit before too, but I'll go through them one by one. Talking about the New York Junior League headquarters, Jessica mentioned that from 1901 to present, 1901 to 1907, they shared meeting spaces within various private homes. From 1907 to 1916, the location was at 42 West 39th Street in a 12 by 12 room, a rented office space. Then it moves from 6 East 45th Street to 135th East 40th Street, up to 133rd East 61st, a private home remodeled for the Junior League headquarters. And then at last year, we covered this in our VET too, back up to 221 East 71st Street, which was a 7-story building designed by John Russell Pope to be the New York Junior League headquarters. That is actually now Marymount Manhattan College. And then from 1948 to 50, sorry, so things were in storage there too. And then before 1950 to present, we're actually in our Astor House, 130 East 80th Street, which we all know and enjoy today. Thank you, Jessica. Here's some images of those. This is the Marymount Manhattan College before it was renovated. So at this time, it included a ballroom. There was a shelter for children, for babies, that was 20 beds, I believe, there. There's a ballroom, a swimming pool, hair cutting, meeting rooms, and then hotel room bedrooms for volunteers there as well. You can see another here and another there. And then, of course, the Astor House in another time frame with that older car there. Sabrina shared outstanding sustainers and volunteers throughout the decades. We spoke a bit about this last time as well, just kind of going through, the evolution of what is now Winter Ball, what it used to look like in the 1950s when it was started. This is the best part about being on this committee and being a Junior League member, is that there is no, shortage of amazing women, obviously, that are around us. But also that within our archives, they're just like the best stories within it. And so here we have a crown there. But it used to be that there would be 5 women and one of them would be crowned, like basically like the queen of the ball. And they had it broadcasted by various television companies at that time too. So thank you, Sabrina. And Marianne suggested a look through the archives reveals how various committees have evolved and continue to meet the needs of the time. Founded in 1979, the Playing and Learning with Seniors, or PALS program, connected young students and seniors through shared activities, fostering mutual enjoyment and education. Honored by Mayor David Dinkins in 1986, the program continues today as Senior Friends, still dedicated to supporting and enriching the lives of the elderly. As we look ahead, we can only imagine where this program will be in the next 40 years. That's a really nice one. Thank you, Marianne. And then Tanya shared a lot of the improving health outcomes of New Yorkers. So we've got also, we didn't include it in the video there, but there was also Alzheimer's disease, what do you call that? Like a PSA for that. Also, working within the hospitals, there's a program for bibliotherapy for any of the volunteers and patients to be able to read. I think there was something like 50,000 books donated at one time. This is actually a therapy where the volunteers from the Junior League went in to the children to help them before and prepare for their surgeries. The VD hotline, this is the poster for this. That was chaired for some time. And then also we spoke before about CHAMP, so that health center there. All right, so I'll stop sharing here. I want to take a look through our speak here. Would we like to go through and do a Q&A? As you can tell by all of the conversations that we had within the video there, there's countless ways, whether you were in a subway, watching the TV and local stations, whether it's up in Albany or in the New York City, council or New York City government too. There's really no far, the Junior League has touched all of these different things for health, for children, for plays, for calisthenics back in the earliest years too. But it's just such an amazing history to kind of see. And one of the best things too, I think, is to kind of go from what you all are interested in for future VETs as well. Has anyone ever shared anything that you'd like to know? I'm going to read from Nina. She says, thank you so much for such a comprehensive overview. How did the league's relationship to Columbia's Dove come about? Did that spin out of the Junior League's rape advocacy efforts, or did those efforts come from a member who also volunteered with the program? That's a great question. Unfortunately, when you have an archive, when you have a collection of all these things, I don't know the answer to that. I always want to say, I'll ask Flora. That's always my answers. Great question, Candace. I'm going to get to that too. I assume that because there has been this longstanding history of that was, finding community partners has always been a great way. And of course, Columbia and Barnard, where Mary went to school, have had a longstanding, Candace also asked, why did the previous headquarters building get sold to Marymount? That's a good question. I think that maybe they outgrew it, or they, no longer needed that. It was designed for them. Last year, I covered that there was a New York Times article talking about how the organization that's right next to it today, National Society of Colonial Dames, built their headquarters next to the Junior League building, or were looking to recreate an 18th century townhome in Lower Manhattan on the Upper East Side next to the Junior League building. So I felt like it must have had some renown that it's just oh, it's over there, But yeah. Wenna asks, did Junior League of New York have any involvement in raising awareness about the crack epidemic, that was prevalent in the 80s and 90s? That's a great question too. That sounds like a great topic to kind of look into as well. There's so many different rabbit holes, I would say, to go down for all of these different things. So I think last year opened up one topic, which was what was the first winter ball like? And then we took it to so many different levels too, to find out where it was, what hotel, where it was located, does it still exist anymore? New York City is an ever and evolving creature, just like the Junior League, and therefore there's just so much there to go for. I'm going to keep kind of looking through hotel. And then it became an apartment building. That's true. It's actually on Lexington and 61st Street is actually where it still is today. I think there's a few different restaurants there too. And a gym. And Candace asked a great question, which I'll wrap up with. Since we did our overview, the best place for you. So this is how it works. Every event that we do, every event that you cover, when you ask the Archives and Photography Committee, we upload your photos to what is called SmugMug. So I'll share my screen here. And SmugMug is where all of this information goes. We still are always adding to it. I think last year I brought up probably close to 1,000 new articles that I had found throughout the years, kind of just interested in learning more about the Junior League, who the members were, what that looked like, what kind of things popped up. I find everything from ice skating to, the campaigns that we have in the subways there too. That would be at nyjl.smugmug.com. This is open for anyone to actually view. We go by the year usually, and you can scroll down and start to see this was brought on at about, I think, 2007. So around the time I actually joined the league, which is super cool. But yeah, if you want to go find old pictures, no, I'm just joking. But we have this great thing put here. Again, Flora Rodriguez is our what you call it, archivist, and she has, privy over like overview of the archive as well as downstairs. Number one question I always end up getting is, can we go to the archive? There's a lot of things down there. It's got to be organized. We've had a few different not tours of it, but it's a very narrow space. So unfortunately, we'd probably never be able to all go down there together for a fun thing. But actually, like I said before, Shannon had a great idea that I think we can kind of evolve from. So if you're ever interested in kind of looking back through time for this, we can start all the way back down to, OEVs and OSs for there. There's a list actually of all of the founding members is something else that we were interested in learning about. But there's a whole list of the first members, which I think is so fascinating. Might be some familiar names there. But it's just so fascinating to think about these women who, went from Barnard and beyond really down to work in the settlement houses in New York City. So yeah. Let's go through and take a look through. There's some more posed ones as well. So a lot of dancing and a lot of singing and a lot of plays. It's always the sweetest part of the archive too. We've got some old brochures and things like that we can take a look at. News clippings. And just, archival images of events taking place at all eras. And with that, I'm going to go back up here again. That's nyjl.smugmug.com, and that's where you'll find that. But I'd like to see if there are any other questions that we can talk to from the committee. Oh, Janina asks a great question. Our membership list throughout the years available for browsing would be interesting to see. I have asked that question with Flora. And unfortunately, that's not, there's not really a yearbook per se, kind of how that goes. I think there are records, but they're probably kept downstairs. I'm not sure that those would ever come out, but we did have an idea for a yearbook idea. All right. Can the VET committee help on? Are there any other questions that we can have on our presentation today before we start the next? All right. And with that, thank you. Thank you so much. No, I really appreciate everyone's, suggestions, and thank you to our VET committee for our Archives and Photography committee for putting that together. Excuse me just a moment. All right. So now one of the coolest things, again, going through this, a lot of what we do has to do with the basically collecting all the information. I know we just got an actual cool thing in our mailbox at the League, was a card. And back in the day, there would be a card, a membership card, instead of a chit, handling your drinks in the Pine Room. And at that time, there was still food too. And instead, you had a card and you would swipe it and it had your name and it had your membership number on it. And that was a new addition from probably the mid 2000s that was placed in there too. So there's everything and anything having to do with the New York Junior League archive. And if you're ever interested in contributing or asking questions, you can always do that too. We do have another guest speaker coming on. So one of the best things I can think about when it comes to being a Junior League member and also talking about the advocacy and all the activities that we have going on. The first person that comes to mind for me was Kristen Blush, and she is going to be our second portion of this evening because I think Kristen exemplifies what it is to be interested in advocacy and activism, but also taking your talent and kind of moving it forward. So archives plus photography is amazing in what Kristen does. So I'm going to share my screen here to kind of talk about that. And Kristen's going to come on. All right, so we're going to welcome Kristen. Ooh, I'm sorry. Excuse me just a moment. All right, so I'm going to welcome Kristen Blush. Kristen Blush is a freelance photographer based in New York City with over 20 years of experience in photojournalism and commercial photography. She is known for her published work of Secretary Hillary Clinton, The Revolutionist Female, and has a long history of using her photography to empower women and the causes that mean the most to her. Her commercial and corporate clients include Google, Citibank, Microsoft, and Amazon. And Blush has photographed celebrities and politicians, including Gloria Steinem, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Katy Perry, and Elton John, to name a few. Welcome, Kristen.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Um, and to echo what Lindsay said earlier, that there's no shortage of amazing women in New York City, and in New York State. So thank you so much for that awesome introduction. Yeah, I put together a snapshot of basically my journey from 2016 to current times, just basically sort of recapping like what I've been doing over the years in terms of using my voice to promote the things that are near and dear to my heart. Here, it's just, there's a couple photographs from some recent work I've done. I was oops, if you could go back to the intro. Yeah, thank you. Lindsay's going to help me out with my slides. So I was the campaign photographer for Letitia James, our New York Attorney General. That was her reelection campaign. You see that photo there, as well as Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. The Argent Wear Pink, you might be seeing pink all over Instagram. I was a part of their Wear Pink ad in 2020 when we were electing Joe. And here is my Congresswoman, as well as Yvette Clarke. I did a photo shoot with her in the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. So y'all might be wondering how I got involved with Secretary Clinton. In 2016, you all might remember there was an election, and I was not a part of the campaign officially. It was an unofficial involvement with the campaign in terms of being a grassroots supporter. So as a professional photographer, I have my clients, my Citibank and all that we mentioned earlier. I was really excited to take my camera and go out and support the secretary however I could. And that meant photographing her rallies, getting together with other supporters, basically using my lens to promote this incredible candidate. So we can skip to the next slide, please. So this was a photograph I took, literally one of those like flag waving, poster waving supporters who got to stand behind. Everyone's looking forward. You've got these amazing women. This was Women for Hillary. And I just snuck my camera back there and literally just took pictures very discreetly. Again, unofficial, just super fan style. And I basically did this throughout the whole election cycle. And when, the election night came, I was at the Javits Center with my camera ready to go, also as a supporter unofficially photographing the event. So I became, post-election, I became a advocate for the Women's March and all that and so on, which I'll show in a moment. But in 2018, I decided to put together a portfolio of all the work I shot over the years from 2016 to 2018 and tweeted about it. And the secretary saw my tweet and reached out to me personally and said, "This is amazing. I would love to see more of your work." And so you can move to the next slide, please. I published a book that is actually quite an abbreviated version of how that all went down, but here's the book. It happened. I wanted to keep this a little short. So did publish this amazing book. I think what was most interesting to her was the fact that it was not affiliated with the campaign. There was no, I wasn't paid for any of this work I was doing. So, and alongside that, my advocacy is also like the career work that I'm doing. So That is a good example of, if you are in a position to hire photographers, hire women if you can. Alongside my advocacy work, I'm also a commercial photographer. So I do like to see more women in those types of jobs. It's a very male-dominated industry, as you may have already noticed. So the next slide is just a photograph. This was the entry photo for the book, The Revolution is Female. Some of these buttons I created with my own artwork. This Black Lives Matter button that's sort of center. I made that with my friend Susie, who did her pose, and she's got her big afro out, and we had a great time with that one. I stylized it, made it into a button. You can see The Revolution is Female there. That's a photograph I took of the secretary. There's a bunch of my work sprinkled throughout, also on Annie Leibovitz. That's fun. But you can skip to the next slide, please. This photograph is supremely Hillary focused in a sea of pink hats. This is on the back cover of my book, The Revolution is Female. And my friends and I got separated. I was trying to figure out how far this crowd went. This was in Washington, D.C. Many of you may have been present there. I got across the way. I was on this hill. And that's also a photograph I took of the secretary in 2016, featured on my sign. And they just rose up, and I got this incredibly powerful photograph to honor Secretary Clinton during this profound moment that we were all experiencing. This was supposed to be a march. There was nowhere to march. There was too many people. It was just gridlock. And the whole world came out, and we had this peaceful protest, which is why I put this photograph on the back of my book, because it launched us into the next phase of our activism. Next slide, please. And just to sum up the work I've been doing since the book, as I mentioned earlier, I was the campaign photographer for Tish James, and as well as Cory Booker. And this is the great Maya Wiley, who is an amazing activist in her own right. This was fun because I got to photograph her for her campaign, and you all may have seen her campaign posters around the city. But just recently, if I may, she published this amazing book, and it's just about her upbringing in the civil rights era. And she did use my photo, which is here. I can't see myself on my screen right now for some reason, but hopefully you can see that that photograph of Maya Wiley, and photo credit down here, which is really special. So you can get this at Barnes and Noble. Okay, and next slide, please. So this photograph of Justice Ginsburg is probably the most important work I've done, in my opinion, in terms of historic relevance. It may have been the last portrait taken of Justice Ginsburg. This was photographed in Washington, D.C. at the U.S. Supreme Court building. And it was in 2019, October of 2019. I was curating a show that was to open in 2020 about the centennial of women's suffrage at the Clinton House Museum in Arkansas. And I went online. This is just to speak to, I know all of you are ambitious to volunteer and get involved. I just looked up the address for the U.S. Supreme Court and how to basically send fan mail to Justice Ginsburg. And it was available online. It's a P.O. box. I packed up a copy of my book, The Revolution is Female, basically a little love letter to Justice Ginsburg, and put it in the mail and waited. And sure enough, I got a letter back from her saying, it would be lovely to get a portrait taken by you. That would be great. And I was, fell out of my chair. I was kind of significantly wild. And then about 6 months later, I got invited to curate this show at the Clinton House Museum. So I wrote her again, a snail mail, another P.O. box, letter in the mail. Hey, this opportunity came up, Justice Ginsburg. I'd love to include you in this show. This time I heard from her aide, and they scheduled me to come down, and I had a 15-minute portrait session with her. And I have actually gone into talks about that experience in its own right. It was just such a phenomenal experience. I like to call it out of body, where I was sort of like floating above the photo session, watching me taking her picture. It was surreal, you all. So it was really fun and really special. And the next slide I just threw in as just like a fun, like at the end, it was just, she said, do you want to get a picture? And I had to say yes, of course. And that was just like a really important moment. And then, you know, a few months later, the world was, you know, in lockdown, and we lost her a little less than a year after that. So it just was really a series of unfortunate events. And the gallery opening at the Clinton House Museum in Arkansas did not end up happening because of the pandemic. So we had a show in Flatbush here in Brooklyn, also her hometown. So it felt very appropriate. And that happened in 2021 on her birthday a year later. So if we could show the video from All Rise really quick. And then also before you start the video, while the video is going, if you all wouldn't mind like dropping a question into the chat box while you're watching, and then this way there'll be like a nice group of questions. I know that was very abbreviated. I jumped around a little bit, but I would love to hear some of your questions about photography, how to use photography, just like anything you might think of that someone with my experience might be able to help you out answer, like how you can get involved, that sort of stuff. So the video. There should be audio. Let's see.
I'm so sorry. I just heard in the chat that someone couldn't hear the audio. So I'm going to restart again. My apologies. I'm not sure if anyone else had that issue. Okay, I'm going to restart it. My apologies.
This exhibition was originally supposed to debut at the Clinton House Museum in Arkansas in 2020. It was centered around the centennial women's suffrage, so it was a little different. When COVID-19 came along, the exhibit was postponed, and then eventually it was canceled. Maybe like 9 months later, we lost Justice Ginsburg. It was an emotional time. You know, we were all in lockdown. We were suffering as a community, just in general, with the pandemic. When I noticed that this date was coming around, I thought, what a good time to bring this show together. I brought in a lot of Brooklyn women and pulled the show together, and it took a little bit of a different form. It's a robust show. There's like a lot of different people. We've got, you know, the governor, we've got the attorney general, we've got Secretary Clinton, we've got VP Harris. seeing the whole group together will be inspiring. You know, in 2018, Secretary Clinton took a special interest in my work, and I was able to publish The Revolution is Female. Her voice and lifting up me and my voice just has allowed me to really like pursue this feminist photography, because I don't think I necessarily would have gotten to go down this road if she hadn't believed in me and uplifted me in my voice and my talent. A special thanks to Justice Ginsburg. So I just hope that putting this together, calling it All Rise, and surrounding her with all these amazing women just will really like continue to uplift her legacy and just like remind us all that Ruth, just within their fighting for us, like her entire career, decades of amazing effort and work. When people walk through, I want folks to see and believe in women as leaders and really like understand that these women are role models for younger women and for younger boys. Let's teach feminism to everyone, right?
Okay. Thank you. All right, let me, one moment. Okay, not sure what was going on with the audio there. Apologies for that. It worked when we did our walkthrough earlier. Okay, so I do see some really great questions in the side panel here. I was wondering, Lindsay, is it possible for you to come on tandem with me, like side by side, or is that like a Zoom feature? Like, can you ask, like, pick out the questions that I can answer, just because there's so many here.
There we go.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so maybe
Awesome.
you can help out with picking these out for me.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Kristen, for coming, for attending this. It was a great addition on, the other end of like New York Junior League advocacy and whatnot. And so amazing, all the things that you've been doing. So let me go through and pick some questions for you. Will you have any upcoming events or gallery showings? We'd love to follow your journey and future work.
Thank you. I currently do not have any gallery showings scheduled at this time. That can always change. Last week, I was just thinking about what the next steps are going to be. It's kind of hinging on this little event that's happening in November, the big election. So I think that once we get through the next couple of weeks, hopefully we elect Kamala Harris. Then there might be something in the mix there in terms of like, the bookend, I guess, like, beginning, middle, and end. So, in the beginning again.
And
So,
you've photographed her before, is that right?
yes. So this grassroots style of photography is really meaningful to me because, like I mentioned, I have other clients that I can rely on to do all my paid work. And then there's also work that I can do for myself. And that was most recently, I was in Philadelphia when she announced Tim Walz as her running mate. That was just a very unique opportunity. So I went down there and brought my camera and got some great shots of her down there. So I could see something like that showing up in a new show for sure.
Amazing. So when asking people or organizations to photograph them, what's your pitch per se? Outside of letting your work speak for itself, what do you offer them in exchange for your time? This is from Wendy.
Okay, so I feel like you kind of want to know a little bit about how you might get involved in this way. Sounds like what were the building blocks here? I think for me, when I saw that Secretary Clinton was spending a lot of time in New York, I use that as an opportunity to show up and just work hard and get some shots out there. I use social media to display the work. And I think it was just like folks liked what they saw. And my persistence and also my excitement around electing her. And this could be for anything. If you're passionate about disability rights, if you're passionate about ending fossil fuel usage, there's just like so many areas that you could, say women's health. So if there's something that you're passionate about, you can self-assign the work. You can go out and produce a little mini body of work and then just start putting it out there. I use social media for this reason. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be on social media. So I think that that's like, it's kind of like you're putting the cart before the horse a little bit. You're like, oh, I already did all this work. And then they can sort of use the work or work with me again or call me, oh, we'd like to hire you to come back and shoot this. Because also part of my advocacy is women getting paid for all of our work. I know like the Democratic Party, most of the volunteers are women. Women, there's so many hours of unpaid labor that women do, just as a real statistical problem we have. So do try to get something in return. If that's just like a cool access to something, maybe there's a candidate you really support and they're doing an event, maybe you get the photo with them, or you can work that out with the group organization. But generally speaking, like if people like what you're doing, they will invite you to continue to doing it.
Awesome. Let's take it back all the way to the beginning. One of our committee members was curious at what point in your life that you knew that photography was your calling. Did you have a camera as a child, or perhaps this is something developed later in life?
That's a really cute question because when I was a pretty young kid, probably like 7, 8 years old, my dad took a community college class, a black and white photography class, like the whole white, dark room and all of that. And he, we were his subjects. I have like this little black and white print of me on my bike. He had to do the panning technique where you pan a moving subject and then that's focused, the background's blurry. I remember doing that down our driveway on my bicycle, so he could capture this photo. And so I think it made an impression on me at a young age. And my high school, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and my high school had this really phenomenal photography program. And I remember getting on the wait list because it was a really just amazing program. The teacher also taught at the community college. And I remember getting called in to the guidance counselor, and they said, the waitlist seat is open. You are in. Which class do you want to ditch? And I'm pretty sure it was like Spanish year 2 or something. And I was like, okay, just make it work, whatever it takes to get into this photography class. So I was definitely like preteen and then like, a little young adult, sort of 16, 17, getting back into it.
That's amazing. What a great story of like, being the subject and now you're the photographer. I love that. Here's another question about your overview from a committee member too. How did you go about developing your ethos and style as a photographer, especially since your work spans across so many contexts and they say politics, entertainment, and portraits?
Yeah, I think that part of my brand is like enthusiasm, happiness, joy. I smile a lot. I'm not too cool for school. Like I'm not the cool person in the room who's like not like intimidating. So I think that part of the work you see like across like all of the genres of different work I do, there's just like this very lightheartedness to it. Like I'm not trying to be someone I'm not. I just kind of put my heart on my sleeve and go after what I want. Sometimes when you are doing advocacy work, you will have friends who disagree with you, and you have to just keep going. You can't like compromise your style and what it is you're doing to like please others. So, I'm not for everyone. We all, we all with big personalities. Just kind of have to keep going. And then that style or that image that you put out in the world will be consistent as long as you're being true to yourself.
It's the best message.
Yeah, like just keep going.
I also love that I still have the pin that you made, one of the pins that you gave me, actually. We have a mutual friend named Joey, and we were with Joey one day, and I got one of the Hillary pins, and I
Yeah.
still have it to this day. So it was
Yeah, oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, I've made probably like thousands of them now. It's also a nice icebreaker. Everyone likes a freebie. So maybe if this event was in person, everyone would have gotten a button. It's just like kind of a way for me to make a friend, promote my cause. I'm very passionate about democratic women, electing democratic women. So there'll be lots of those buttons. Like wherever I'm going, there's like a trail of like buttons behind me.
So you've been involved in some high-profile exhibitions and publications. What is one of the most proudest moments in your career, and why does it stand out to you?
Okay. Well, I already mentioned the Justice Ginsburg photo session. That's probably like personally just a greatest achievement. But I would also say that the All Rise photo show that I showed the video from, because you know this was during a pandemic. It was the 2021 September. And so I think it was just like, instead of curling up into a ball and crying because I didn't get my big art show in Arkansas, which, okay, there might have been a little bit of that, but I rose to the occasion and took the opportunity to honor her and her legacy on her birthday. And I partnered with a Brooklyn store. You saw it was in a shop. And I licked my wounds and I put it together, and we had a great turnout. You saw that Tish James came, Maya Wiley came, like a lot of the women who I included in the show participated. So it just really, like, I felt like my community really like wrapped me in a big hug that night. And so, which I really needed, to be honest, because, you feel like, and I know like everyone lost something during that time, and what I lost was like this opportunity, right? So I'm just really glad that I was able to put all the work together and make it happen regardless.
From the chat, is campaign photography more challenging than entertainment or events?
Yes. Short answer is yes. The work, it is a lot of work. It's very hard. It's not paid well. And the turnaround is really extreme. And it's like there's a late event and then an event in the morning. So it just like really pushes you physically. And then there's also just like so many points of contact. Whereas like if I'm going to say Senator Gillibrand is like, I'm having my annual birthday celebration. I've been shooting this for her for many years. It's one night, it's fun. I show up. I show up when all the work's done. All the work has been done. I show up, everyone's happy. It's like, it's like showing up on election night versus canvassing all month, right? So when you're part of a campaign, you're there for like all the grueling parts versus just like being there at the end where it's like fun and everyone's celebrating. So it's definitely a lot more work. Also super fun. I highly recommend it.
Amazing. This is a great question coming from Claire in the chat. Do you ever get release forms or just go for it when shooting in public or of elected officials?
Yeah, so there is a app I use. I can follow up with you, Claire. I don't want to pull out my phone and like look up this app right now, because I think it's just called Model Release, something very basic like that. I highly recommend getting it on your phone, because it enables you to take a photo of your subject in the app, and then they can type in their information, their contact information, and basically release the photo to you with like their finger. They can sign it. And I use that for a lot of my work if I'm contributing to things like Adobe Premium Stock, if I'm like selling stock images. But otherwise, if I'm showing up to a rally and photographing someone in a public setting, then no, I didn't need to ask for Hakeem Jeffries' permission to shoot him speaking at it, because everyone's taking pictures. It's, everyone's got their phones, and I've got my camera. If I use it on my Instagram, I've never had anyone say, hey, can you take that down? I don't like that photo for whatever reason. So basically like yes and no, like use the release, use your instinct to determine like, hey, this might be a good opportunity to get this release for this individual. If you're going to sell something, you don't want to run into any problems down the road. I hope that helps.
That's great. Yeah, and that's questions that we have a lot of times, like on our committee, it's like who we take photos of, who we don't, and who we have permission. And so those are tricky when you're working in the public. But like you said, being at a public event is obviously a little bit more easy and like straightforward in that case. So
And also like use discretion too. Like if I am doing an event for a client, it's like a client, an employee's event. You're not sharing those photographs publicly. Sometimes I'll even have to sign like an NDA, like these photos are for internal use only. So that's when like the self-assigned work gets fun because you're like, oh, I need something for my newsletter this month. Like, let's go out and shoot some stuff because you can't always use like the stuff you shot at Google last week because it's like very on lock.
excellent. Like looking through your photography, specifically through this presentation with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, this is a great question that kind of goes along with that, since you had only 15 minutes, that's a lot of pressure, as you said. And then the turnaround time for any of these things is also a lot of pressure and a lot of work. So as a photographer, do you have methods of encouraging the subject of your photographs to relax and feel safe? I struggle with feeling nervous when having my photo taken. Thank you, Jade, for that question.
Oh, it's a great question. I am so good, if I may say so myself, at making people feel comfortable in front of the camera. I have a client who I shoot for them all the time. They're called E&R. They're like a big infrastructure group. The woman who runs the E&R calls me Smiley. I'm not even sure she knows my name. She's like, oh, good, we got Smiley again. Like, I find that like smiling behind the camera, and this was really difficult during like all the masking time. When we were masking, I was like, this is hard because I find that like people tend to smile back or feel relaxed. I shot an event recently, this comes to mind. There's a nature organization I do, the Nature Coalition. I'm butchering that, sorry. They have like their gala once a year, and all the national parks folks who came wanted like a picture in front of the step and repeat. And I raised the camera up and I'm like, okay, and I'm kind of adjusting people. Always take like a moment to situate large groups, like people are standing behind people and all that. And I was like, y'all, can everyone just breathe in and then breathe out? And everyone started laughing because like collectively they were like the most nervous group I've ever photographed. This like cute Parks Department group. And they all laughed. And it was like, I just took one little moment to just point out that, hey, you guys are holding your breath, or you might be like, hey, this is cool. This is just like a little group shot. This is going to be done in a moment. And like everybody just like relaxed because I called out the elephant in the room, right? Like this is easy. Don't worry about it. The 15 minutes with Justice Ginsburg, that was me. I was the nervous one, for sure. She came into that room and was like, where do you want me? And was like, right to work, just like so on brand for her. And then after the photo shoot, she was like, hey, let's get a picture. Like, and I said, where was this energy like 15 minutes ago? Because I was scared. I was really nervous. So yeah, the photographer can be nervous, subject can be nervous, but just to like remind yourself that it is just a photo. Relax, inhale, exhale. Breathing is free. Inhale through the nose, out through the mouth. Calm down a little. And I tend to find that people get relaxed just doing a couple little things like that.
Some of the things we photographed are like big events for the junior league and also small ones as well. So one of the things we teach is like how to, work in a small room and versus like a ballroom that's just full of so many people, so that's really important. So thank you for sharing those tips there too. We have another great question in the chat from Morgan. When was the first time you felt successful, and how has your definition of success changed as your career has progressed?
Thank you for that question. I was always encouraged as a young person when I was in photo class at my high school. I also I was very ambitious, and I asked the local paper if I could shoot for them alongside taking this program. And I had a mentor there. His name was Jim Bryant, and he said, "Oh, this is so cool. If somebody wants to like hang out at the at the newspaper like after school." I think I was the only person who ever asked about that. And we were shooting film. This was 1998, and he would send me on assignments. I shot baseball. I shot football games. I did like a Indigenous peoples event. Again, this was the Northwest. We had a lot of communities there. And so he published one of my photographs on the cover of the paper, the Port Orchard Independent. Very small, you've never heard of it. But it was in color and it was on the cover, and it had my name. And I just remember feeling like, oh, this was it. And that feeling was like what I craved for basically until now I'm whatever, 40 something. It's like just like that, that craving for seeing my work published, getting into cool things. So I think it was just like the sparkly, like the crow going after the sparkly object was like me shooting entertainment, growing up, moving to Seattle, shooting. I shot entertainment for a decade there. And then, moving to New York, another shiny object, and then Secretary Clinton. So I think that was like a good sense of like what I wanted, seeing that like first initial like moment of, aha, this makes me so happy. I love this.
What was that transition like for you to start from film and then on to digital?
It was really interesting because out of school, I went and got my associates in commercial photography at the Art Institute, and I had an internship at the Experience Music Project Museum in Seattle, which is now called MoPop. And it's basically the Jimi Hendrix Museum, the Frank Gehry building, if anyone's familiar with it. It sits below the Space Needle. And so I worked there. And you know, it, they had like this was a Paul Allen situation who bought rocket ships and everything. Before he died, he had all the money, and so we had all this cool gear. And so we also had a concert venue there. So like, little bands like the Donnas, like, little like C-list bands, and we got some bigger bands too. But I started shooting on the digital gear. It was there, so I would pull it out of the closet, check it out, do my thing, return it to the closet, the workplace. And then I remember my boss there was like, I really think this is the future. I think you need to get a digital camera. And so in 2002, I got my first digital camera of my own. And I had to get the lenses too. Like you couldn't just like share the lenses with the digital camera body. It was all new. But I do remember being like kind of the first 20-year-old person to be walking around like digital gear in like Seattle, because like this guy, Paul Allen had it. It was all part of his like collection. And so I got to like use digital gear before it was super mainstream. So I felt it was like I didn't have to do it alone. I had help, like the transition. I got to try the gear and I really liked it because I didn't have to go and, spend all that money on film, dark room, processing, the waiting, all that is just, I was over it. So it came just in time.
For fun, do you ever go back to doing darkroom things as well? Because I know I had a friend who did a lot in the darkroom when we were in college, and we used to spend a lot of time in the darkroom.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I remember like there being like a romantic element to it. And like in the movies, it's always, if you all watch The Crown, I'm hanging up the pictures in the dark room. And like, yeah, there's like a romantic element to it. But like, I never have I looked back because I hated the toxicity of all the chemicals. Somebody always dropped the tongs into the fixer and you always had to use that smell. And yeah, I just never missed it because I wanted to be out shooting, and like the dark room was just like something. It was fun in high school. I remember we would play like Beastie Boys and like hang out in the dark room after school. It was cool and all that, but professionally, like it's great that we don't have to deal with all that anymore.
Amazing. We have, a few more minutes here, about 15 more minutes, enough for probably 2 to 3 more questions. If anyone else has another question, you can definitely put it in the chat. But one of the other things we have a few questions on, Kristen, is what are your next steps? Like, what's upcoming for you?
I think we talked about this earlier. I would say, in 2 weeks is the election. I'm very cautiously optimistic. I already purchased an Amtrak ticket for inauguration, and I got a hotel room reserved, a refundable reservation for inauguration. And so my hope is that in January I can go and attend again grassroots. The campaign did not utilize me in terms of hiring me to do official work for them this year. So, Kamala Harris, and so I would be going down there as a supporter. Like we could go together and stand there and cheer. I won't have any special access, but I'm interested in capturing the people because those photographs of I was in Washington State, so I didn't attend, but Obama's inauguration, the lawn was just packed. That's where I see myself in January. So that's the hope and the dream. We need to, get through the finish line, but we're gonna know soon. So.
It's always amazing when you're, at the Women's March, for example. I had so many friends there. The chances of us finding one another were like close to zero.
I know. If you didn't go together, there was no cell reception and everybody it was gridlock. Yeah.
I actually made friends that I stayed in touch with for years
Oh,
after that too. So it was really sweet. But yeah, that was like one of the biggest things was like, where do I want to be when this is happening? There. So like you said, you're already on your way to DC. So that's so cool.
yeah, and we didn't climb any walls of any important buildings or break into anything. We were just very organized
Just
individuals.
snapping with our cameras.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So yeah, I don't see any other questions in the chat, but I wonder, maybe you might have a question for us at the Junior League. Was there anything that struck you in the history of the Junior League that you were interested in or had a question about?
I was happy to see Caroline Maloney in your video. I have photographed her on occasion and really adore her. So yeah, I think that empowering women is probably the most important thing we can do right now. We're the majority, there's 51%, and we're completely we've had improvements, but we've been completely untapped in terms of what we're capable of, what we're doing. And I would like to see more of that just in general from everyone, just to see the value that you bring to the table. And when we get together in like big groups like this, like a lot can happen that's good for the community. And equity, pay equity, all that is just so important. And just how to advocate for yourselves and each other and, keep going. Yeah, I don't know if that helps, but it definitely helps me looking around and knowing I'm a part of something that's a little bigger.
Absolutely. And I always say, like, women make the best photographers because when you go around, like, we notice the right things. We know how she wants to look. We know which photo to upload and which not to.
Oh,
We had some discussions on our committee about like their wedding photos or,
yeah.
like all these things of like the little
Mhm.
nuances that
You
women.
know,
So.
It's funny you say that because I will end with this. I have had so many folks say to me, just over the years, you have never taken a bad photo of Hillary Clinton. And I'm like, right. Like, I wouldn't like, of course, there's unflattering photos of Hillary Clinton deep, deep in my computer that will never see the light of day because I have an agenda. I want her looking beautiful, powerful, strong. Yes, that editing eye. You mentioned women have the ability to have this eye. Yeah, I'm definitely like not selling things to Fox News for a buck. I don't think men have a problem with that. I might be wrong, but I mean, I don't see a lot of women photographers' names on these photos. And I'm the one looking at that. My eye goes to like, oh, who took the photo? People don't think of it. I do. And so, yeah, I think that women and men, there's a lot of men who take beautiful photos of Secretary Clinton, but you just won't see a bad one from me ever.
I think Wenna is asking a question. I believe you've already photographed Vice President Harris, but here's her question, and again, edited. In your opinion, what angles captures the subject power the best? A side profile or eyes straight on? If you had, oh, so she says after she wins, which angle would you choose? I hope my question makes sense, LOL.
Yeah, I think that the side, maybe not the total profile. There's one behind me on this side of it's a profile photograph I took of Harris. This was in 2019. She was senator. She was running for president. I supported her campaign. As well as this photo above it of Maya Wiley that's like a little off camera, but also looking off, off camera. I think that these photos do make for very like stylized posters, looking off into the future, like the power is like ahead of us, that sort of thing. And then eye contact photos, you're not going to get very often in event situations or settings. I think that like, for an example, I'll shoot an event with this event. How about the one that I shot here? This was an event, a fundraising event, and there was no like eye contact except for at the beginning when I took the portraits of her. Like the beginning, like if you donated so much money, you get your photo with her, right? So there was like a big line. Next. I was there taking the photos of Kamala with each individual who got their photo. And yes, eye contact. But in the environment where you're shooting an event, people like are really good at this, like, a politician or a celebrity, they're not looking at cameras, they're like trying to engage with people. So you won't get a ton of eye contact in that particular setting. So it's always like, you'll notice the gaze is always a little off the lens. When posing someone, I will do both. And then generally I'll, do an edit. I've got such an eye for editing. I'll send like, these are the best photos. And then generally like a campaign team will run with that. They'll pick it out. And so it's always interesting to see which one they use at the end of the day. Versus like, let me see if I can tip my camera up. You can see Maya Wiley here. I don't know if y'all saw this photo all over. It was like all over the city. Everywhere you looked, it was on buses. It was like me, that crow following the shiny object. Like everywhere I looked was like this photo, this poster. But again, like this was a photo shoot. And so there was photos, eye contact photos, as well as looking off. And for this purpose, they used one looking off. So I think it kind of depends on like where it's going to be placed. Placement is a thing that might make the call there.
Is there any place you'd like to see your work in the future that you haven't already done because you've done so much?
So my book was accepted into the Library of Congress, and I did send, thank you. And I sent them with the book, I sent them some prints from the book of, each section I put together a packet of prints. So I secretly hope someday they'll put together an exhibit and pull from their archives. They're like, what do we have that has to do with 2016, and they'll come across it and like put it on display as part of that. It would be really incredible for the Justice Ginsburg picture to, the collar she's wearing in the photo I took of her was a crocheted collar that she wore when she laid in state. And so, yeah, and so Time Magazine did a whole series of her collars, the meaning behind them, pictures of her in them, but I didn't see any photos of her with that particular collar, the one that she laid in state. So it would be nice to see that work maybe positioned with the collar. If it goes on tour, maybe the collar is there and the portrait of her that I took is there. But because like the show didn't happen and we had a pandemic, like everything got stunted. And so I haven't submitted, like nobody knows about the photo except for like Brooklyn, like the people in Brooklyn who came out and saw the show. If they follow me on Instagram, they've seen it, but It did go a little under the radar, so I'd like to see, my work in DC in some capacity, like being on display.
Wonderful. And so we're about to round out, till about 8:30. We have like 5 minutes. So do you have any other questions or any, things you'd like to share with us today? Thank you so much for everything. This has been really, engaging and just wonderful to hear about your
Thank
progress from
you.
Prince to,
Also, yeah. Also,
yeah.
like just to touch on dark, you asked me about the dark room, digital, all that. I just want to remind people too that like the best camera you have is the one that's like always on you. So that iPhone or that smartphone, I should say, you have a smartphone, it takes beautiful photos. Don't be shy with pulling it out, asking people to pose for you. And you don't have to just capture and run. You can pose people, you can use lighting, you can use those smartphones in really powerful ways. There's a couple smartphone photos published in my book. That's what I had. And so I just recommend that everyone, if they're interested in photography and are like, oh, I don't know if I want to buy like a whole new machine and have it's in my closet, it's dusty, or like, oh, the technology is kind of advanced or whatever, like your smartphone is doing some really great stuff. They even make like a Bluetooth flash. You can use like a little external flashes for your smartphone. Profoto makes one. So if you are interested in getting involved with photography and your activism, you're at a march, you're protesting somebody, taking those photos with your phone and never looking at it again, or maybe be more thoughtful about it when you pull out your phone to take thoughtful photographs, and you can always compile them and show them on Instagram and like, carousel view or I think it's very common to use smartphones for professional photography now.
Absolutely. We share that on our committee too. It's like
Yeah.
practice is perfect, right? Whether you're out in the park, whether you're out and
Yeah,
about.
they're great. They're great tools for using your voice, getting your word out. It's right on your phone. So
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Kristen. This has been wonderful. And, if you have any other, suggestions or tips, where can we follow you? How can we learn more about
um,
what you'll be doing next?
yeah, I have a newsletter. It's on my website, kristenblush.com, and there's a newsletter tab. You can sign up. I send out one newsletter a month. It's called My Photo of the Month. And so I actually have a really high click rate because people, I think they want to see what my photo of the month is. It's kind of a funny little thing I do. I just pick one that I took and I name it the photo of the month. And then below that, I show anything else I did that I can. I talked about some things I can't always share, but the things I can share, I drop, below that. And then below that is just any upcoming news. So like if I'm going to be at a rally, come say hi to me if you see me. Yeah, I'm planning on being there, stuff like that. And it comes out once a month, so it's not like a spam situation. I do it all myself, so it is a little labor of love, my newsletter. And then also Instagram is at Kristen Blush. And my Instagram stories are pretty lit. I post a lot to my Instagram stories. And then you'll see like new portfolio work pop up like once every 2 weeks or so. There.
Excellent. So I've shared your website and your Instagram in the chat for everyone to follow.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate you all tuning in for this. It was very meaningful to talk with all of you. And I hope I helped and let's stay connected.
Getting lots of thank yous in the chat.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. And like we just skimmed the surface, y'all. Yeah.
Yay. All right. Thank you so much, Kristen. We'll see you soon online.